he had one of the greatest fighters of all time, Holyfield, go to his corner asking if he had all of his teeth in his mouth. Now think about the type of power that takes. You hit somebody so hard that their teeth are like perfectly where they're supposed to be, but they're convinced that their teeth are gone, not just like loose, gone. Bear with me as I give a little nerd preface. In some games, there's an archetype for a character known as the warrior monk. I think it also has historical precedence. It's kind of a paradoxical label because it's someone who vies for peace while simultaneously being a capable warrior, beating people up, fighting in battle, whatever. It seems more fictional than it does realistic, but I know that it's realistic because there's at least one man I've seen that perfectly embodies that concept. The man we're going to talk about today. Fighters can be some of the most peaceful people because when you know violence, then you know the negativity that follows behind it. And so sometimes people will be surprised that fighters will walk away from situations, but of course they would. They understand those situations. Fighters can also be volatile and dangerous because choosing a career where you get punched in the face isn't generally considered a good indicator of mental stability. So fighters can also be crazy in simpler terms. But not only are there very few fighters that find themselves at peace, there is a minuscule amount of people in general that can reach that state. George Foreman is one of those outliers. I'll talk about his career and also talk about why I think he's a definition of underrated. But first, what makes him special as a man. No one appreciates peace more than the warrior. And there was a point in his career where he was the boogeyman, the next Sonny Liston, even it maybe even more terrifying relative to that time period. Then he lost it all to Ali and found himself in a dark place, but he found a way out of that dark place and became an even better man and maybe even better fighter. And that sounds like a cliche or an easy thing to do because we read so many stories and watch so many movies where characters reach a low point and then they come back and we're so used to it. But in the real world, that's a rare thing to do. To leave your life's work behind after a brutal loss, then and become a broken man, and then somehow put yourself back together in an even stronger state. If you don't believe that that's difficult, look at the current landscape of fighters, many of whom we've grown up on the verge of retirement, or fighters who have retired. There's a lot of issues, a lot of extra embarrassment, a lot of court cases, a lot of mistakes, a lot of not knowing when to walk away, and not a lot of peace. Now, there are fighters who find their peace, and I hope that there are more, but there are very few of them who rebuild themselves into a better person than what they were before. That can, in my opinion, only be accomplished by finding a deeper purpose that supersedes your former career, supersedes your desire. And that's where one finds peace. For George Foreman, that was his community, that was his religion. But even then, George wasn't completely at peace because he has something else to prove. In his retirement speech, when he was in his late 40s, late mid 40s, 47, 48, I think, I can't remember. It was after the Shannon Briggs fight. He said that he wanted to prove that old men can do it too. A fight where many people at the time, and many people now, probably most, think that George Foreman should have won that fight. Considering that most fighters want to go out on top, or just most competitive people in general, that's a reasonable desire, by the way, it would make sense that he would protest the decision. Not only did he avoid protesting a decision, he gave Shannon Briggs all the credit, which kind of elucidates why he's there in the first place. He wasn't just there to win. Obviously, he wants to win, right? That was important. But what's even weirder, another weird part is that I watched the interview a couple of weeks ago, like a week and a half ago, before his passing. It's such a weird coincidence, but he said, you can pursue excellence as long as you want. It's not about when people say you've reached your limit. It's about when you say it, which again sounds cliche, kind of standard, but it's coming from the mouth of a literal superhuman who terrorized 2 generations of the greatest hand-to-hand combatants to ever walk the earth. I think people don't often like put into perspective how unique boxing, MMA, kickboxing is in terms of at the elite level what these men are capable of, especially at heavyweight, where the winners are deemed the baddest men on the planet. We're dealing with some of the humans that, if we go across history, all before that point and even some after that point, if we were to line up the greatest warriors and hand-to-hand combatant, many of them, hand-to-hand combatants, I should say, many of them are going to be on George Foreman's resume in terms of fighters he faced in the 70s and 90s. So literally, if you were to go across the thousands of years of human history and find the best hand-to-hand fighters, many of them are going to be people who George Foreman beat up, knocked out, or fought and possibly lost to. And he didn't do good. He did great. He didn't beat many of them. He beat almost all of them. And half of them he did when he was closer to 50 than he was to 40, which that's why I say superhuman. So when I talk about the word underrated, to me, for example, Ali is perfectly rated. He's the GOAT and he's constantly praised as that. That's perfect rating. George Foreman, on the other hand, his name is sometimes brought up in the conversation, but not as much as I think it should be. Because he kind of did a similar feat to what Ali did. Two separate careers. What Ali did is he beat the two scariest boogeymen of all time, or at least in the top three. Mike Tyson may be in that list of just boogeymen, like the scariest, most intimidating fighters of their time. And Ali did it with the odds stacked against him. He wasn't supposed to win. In fact, people thought George was going to kill him. George Foreman, on the other hand, was the boogeyman. He terrorized and smoked just about everyone in the 70s except for Ron Lyle, but you know how that goes. Some of these dudes, some of them just built different. Then he came back and terrorized everyone in the 90s. And he had one of the greatest fighters of all time, Holyfield, go to his corner asking if he had all of his teeth in his mouth. Now think about the type of power that takes. You hit somebody so hard that their teeth are like perfectly where they're supposed to be, but they're convinced that their teeth are gone, not just like loose, gone. He thought, yeah, that's a completely different type of power. Yeah, confusion, pain, numbness. So when I say superhuman, I truly do mean it. In fact, he's a big inspiration for this channel because there are two terms we use to describe power here: explosive power versus heavy-handed power. It's like a spectrum. Most people are somewhere in the middle. The reason why I personally came up with heavy-handed power is because I would watch George Foreman and I would look at how effortless he threw the punches, and I would see how people would, they would look like they got hit with a sound wave from like a jet or something. And I didn't know it was humanly, before I saw George Foreman, I didn't know it was humanly possible that someone could put in such little effort into their punches and have such an impact. But his journey was anything but effortless. Ultimately, he's going to be more remembered for the man who he was, the community he took care of, the religion he represented with such grace, and the people he inspired. And that's all boxing is an instrument for, which I try and say throughout the history of this channel. In my opinion, boxing serves to do two things: entertain and inspire. Watching a massive old man put up a cross guard, walk down a young prime heavyweight and beat the goofy out of him, there are very few things in my book more entertaining than that. But to also see that old man hold up a title for the second time in his life as an old man, there are very few things more inspiring than that. I love the science. I love boxing. So of course I love George Foreman. But to me, George is the definition of a warrior, the encapsulation of a warrior, because he didn't just fight for money. He didn't just fight for attention. He didn't just fight to just prove some point to everyone else that he's that good, or to the haters. He matured, he grew, and then he came back to fight to prove to people that the worst thing you can do to yourself is not believe in yourself. And that's actually a message I agree with very strongly. That's probably one of the most damaging things you can do to your capabilities is to not believe in them. Yeah, and like I said, warriors are, in an ironic way, fight for peace, and you're at peace when you believe in yourself, and that's where George is, and that's what George represents. It's not just what a warrior should be, it's also what a fighter should be, what a man should be. And it's sad, but death is far less sad when you've given everything in life. And so that's where we're at. Notification bell on, hit the like so you can help get this message out. I will see y'all very soon. More analysis, more spreading out, talk about some other sports, of course, but I do gotta do Sugar Ray Leonard versus Roberto Duran. I'm out.